Alright, welcome back everyone to the seasonal wrap-up show. We are diving into the fall 2023 season now. We are almost caught up on the last year of anime. I did a few entries for the our Anime Awards catch-up, but now we're diving into this proper. We got 51 entries, and I'm going to do two things a little differently this time. First, I want to draw attention to this little thing here. I've decided to just place some bets with myself of like the amount of shows that I expect to finish from this list. At minimum, I believe I am going to finish at least 10 of these anime. Like, there are 10 shows on this list where I am like, definitively, yes, I am very positive I'm going to finish this. And on the other end, I'm going to say that 18 is my expected maximum. I'm going to say, at most, I will probably finish 18 shows from this list, which is quite a lot. Out of 51, that's like a little more than a third, I believe. Could be more, could be less. It could even be less than 10. We'll find out. But before that, we have to dive in. But first, I decided last season, when I immediately rolled the Strange Fake as number one, that I thought opening on a single episode anime would be a really good place to start. So we're just going to start the fall season with Burn the Witch 0.8. This is like a prequel episode to the Burn the Witch ONA that came out a few years ago, which I liked quite a bit. So let's see how this prequel do.
I feel kind of conflicted about that, not gonna lie. Like, on the one hand, it is just more Burn the Witch, and Burn the Witch is good, and it has a lot of the things that make Burn the Witch good, like the phenomenal animation, for example. This is a really goddamn good-looking single episode of anime. The action animation is incredible. Character animation is really solid. Character designs are super crisp and clean, and just really good designs because they're Taito Kubo designs. And he makes really good designs. It's the Bleach guy, if you didn't remember. And the humor's still there for the most part. Like, there's some really good banter between all of the characters. Like, the characters actually have good chemistry. And it's not like a super interesting world to explore, but it's still like a little bit fascinating. It's got like these little bits and pieces here and there of like, oh, that's a cool little bit of world building. I like that. Although I will say this first episode explained, or this prequel episode, I guess I should say, explained, did exposition way more than anything in the 3 episodes of the first Burn the Witch series. Well, maybe not that much. Maybe just a little bit more. Who knows? So, on the one hand, it's got a lot of the stuff that Burn the Witch had that's good. But it's also, missing some stuff, too. On the one, this is just a single episode, so it can't do, the big, character arc that the original series had going for it. So that's missing from it. I can't really fault it for not having a super deep character arc there. What I can fault it for is that was swapped out for Balgo. This episode made me like Balgo significantly less. I dislike this character now. He's not fun. Because, okay, so in the original series, in the first 3 episode thing that came out, there was sort of not even a running gag, it only happened twice, where it's Balgo's dog, which is actually a dragon inside of a dog's corpse, keeps asking Noelle to see her panties because Balgo wants the implication in the first series was that Balgo likes Noelle and so he wants to see her panties. But he never says it in the show. It's only through the fucking dog thing. And so it's sort of like this is Balgo's like inner seedy inner thoughts peeking out, which was fun. In this prequel episode, he just straight up says it to her face. He just asks her to see her panties to her face. And he has a whole conversation with his best friend about why this isn't working out for him. And I want to fucking strangle this guy. It's nonsense. We did not need that. There was no need for that whatsoever. Also, so like the end of the first like 3-episode thing kind of implied that Noelle actually also had feelings for Balgo in a certain way. And so I imagined like, okay, so there was this episode is going to like bridge into that, like how Noelle started to like fall for Balgo. And I don't buy it at all. Like, there is like one very small thing that makes him like slightly cool. I don't buy it. So I'm kind of conflicted about this one. Would I recommend it? Maybe. If you're really craving more Burn the Witch stuff, but it's not as good as the first 3 episodes simply because, like, it messes up Balgo's, or it makes Balgo a more annoying character, and it's just not as good.
Alright. Burn the Witch 0.8 is complete. And we're not going to go too far up the list. We're actually going to stick it right in here at the number 39 spot. And you get a decent 6. It was fine. The good balanced out the bad. Oh well. Alright. So, now that our opening single episode is done, we're going to roll into some randoms now. What do we got? 44 randoms. Let's see what we roll first. It's going to be 11, and that is... what is that? Dark Gathering. Okay, I actually read the first volume of the manga and held off on continuing it because I wanted to see if the how good the anime was. So let's dive in.
Alright, I just finished up all of Dark Gathering, which was a bit of a surprise to me. This was not one that was like super big on my radar of like, I'm definitely hyped for this one. But it turned out surprisingly competent for the most part. What I like about this one is that it feels like at least the first like third of the series, very much the first third of the series, but definitely still much later on, is this felt like a real back to basics supernatural horror episodic anime. Something like in the vein of like Tokyo Majin, if anyone remembers that, or like what Ghost Stories actually is, not the dub of Ghost Stories, but like the actual like Japanese version. And I was thinking, I was like, there's something that I can't remember that's even more similar, and I was like, some kind of kids show, and I was like, why couldn't I think of there's a kids show like this why couldn't I remember? And it wasn't until like literally the second to last episode that it was a show that I had already watched from 2023, and that show was Digimon Ghost Game. So it's very much in the vein of these like episodic supernatural horror series from my youth, you could say. Like this feels like it could have come out 20 years ago and it would not have been out of place at all, and that's a good thing in my opinion. Like it is like, especially that first, like the first like 8-9 episodes, it is very much a episodic horror series with a very loose through line to what it's trying to do. And almost in a weird way, also influenced by like episodic adventure children's shows, like aside from Digimon. Like there is definitely some Pokemon influence in this to a certain not to like a huge extent, but I don't think it's a coincidence that like in these first like 8-ish episodes, whenever Yayoi captures a ghost, she says like "Getto daze," which is the exact same thing that Ash says in Pokemon when he catches a Pokemon. And like the subtitles reflect it too. It's like, I caught so-and-so ghost. And so it's like there is, at least on a referential level, there is Pokemon influence on this otherwise very grotesque supernatural horror series. And that's another thing that I really appreciate about it, is that it is gross and scary. Like they do not pull punches with the body parts and the blood and the graphic imagery, and on top of that, it's actually pretty goddamn scary in certain instances. And maybe not scary, but like very tense and very like suspenseful. Like it has really good like jump scare moments, in that they're not really like jump scares. They're just sort of like, oh shit, the fucking ghost is right there. Like the frame just cut to the ghost and it's right there. And I'm freaking the fuck out now. And it was very effective at those moments. Like, by combining like that cinematography, it's very good at framing these ghosts in extremely creepy ways. And like the way that it's paced out, the episodes are paced out, constantly makes, even though Yayoi is like super overpowered for being a third grader, the series, the ghosts still constantly feel like a threat. It's mostly because it's like not normally Yayoi that's the like target of the ghosts. It's usually one of the other characters, either Keitaro, who is like technically the main character, or Eiko, his best friend slash love interest. While I'm there, I will say that that's one of the things that I was like a little bit disappointed with by the series. It's like at the end of episode 6, they're basically like, we're in a relationship now, and I was like, oh cool, we're gonna actually that's actually going to like mean something to the series, and it does not mean anything at all. The nature of their relationship does not change in any capacity whatsoever once they start dating, and they don't actually like date at all in the show. They just say that they are going out. So a little disappointing there, but the ghosts, the designs are creepy as fuck. And the like coloring and the effects is usually really good. Yeah, this is a creepy show. And it doesn't, like, try to be, like... It doesn't try to overcomplicate anything all that much. Like, there's still some, like, complicatedness to how the ghosts are captured, but, like, the plot itself, at least in, like, the first third, doesn't get doesn't try to overly complicate itself with, like, what the goals are and what is trying to be accomplished. It's just, like, episode about a random ghost, here's how Yayoi captures them. And I like the capture techniques. I like the way that it builds its own mythos around how ghosts are to be captured. That's, like, part based in actual, like, Japanese spiritualism, and then a lot of it seems, like, original. Like, I loved this idea of, like, the graduates of, like, basically, like, Yayoi's, like, top-tier ghosts that she's trained. That was a real... I don't know, I thought that was a really interesting concept. Basically, like, evolved Pokemon in a certain way. Now, I keep saying first, third in this series because like, the plot structure shifts slightly, after the first, like, double episode, or two-parter, which is where they introduce Ai, who I really enjoy, actually. I wish she was in way more of the series than she actually is. Despite how overly gyaru she is, I actually thought she was very, like, charming and endearing. I liked the base of her character. I liked her motivations for the way she acts. She was fun. I wish there was more of her in the show. But after her, like, two-parter, which, by the way, the ghost in that is fucking terrifying, the plot structure shifts to more, like, arc-ish, like, short arcs storytelling, where it's like, instead of a ghost randomly shows up and they have to deal with it, now they are going out to fight specific ghosts that are, like, the top-tier ghosts in Japan. And, like, I was in the moment, when that first started happening, I was like, oh, I'm kind of disappointed that it's shifting away from, like, these single-episode stories. Because I actually like the single-episode stories, and I was worried it was going to overcomplicate the plot. And I don't think it did, overall, but there are some areas where I think it does, what's the word? It does get a little too big for its britches, I guess. Not so much that. It's more so that, if your strength is in episodic stories, and the one thing I know about episodic stories from watching a lot of Pokemon and a lot of Precure, and also a lot of Digimon now, is not all of them are going to be winners. Like, some of them are going to be less interesting than others, which is fine for episodic stories because there's always... They're episodic. You're like, oh, this episode wasn't quite as good. Maybe the next one will be better. And then usually the next one's a lot better. But when you start doing longer story arcs, but basically with a similar format, you run the risk of having entire story arcs that aren't all that interesting. Like basically the last arc of this season of the anime, the one where they're Yayoi's trapped in the school, I wasn't super into. Like, it introduced the one character in this that I actually just outright dislike, this Dorothy character, who is actually, like, not Dorothy, but by the way, I thought it was very wild to be like, this anime enters, like, the last 6 episodes, and it's like, and it just goes, have you ever seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Like, it it just suddenly introduces, like, oh, some humans have just been replaced by spirits. Good luck figuring out which ones. And then it starts introducing how you can figure out who's been replaced. I thought that was a great concept. But Dorothy in particular, I just don't care for. I don't like her at all. So she weighed down that school arc a bit. I will say the second episode definitely made it feel a lot more interesting. And also, when you get into these longer story arcs, you start to get a little bit more of the granular detail of what the author thinks about these stories. I'm not going to talk about this too much because it's mostly speculation on my part. But the more I watched of this anime, the more I got an inkling of, let's say, what this author's ideology is regarding certain concepts. And I will reference that last arc, the school arc, as well as the House of the Virgin Conception arc in reference to that. I'm not going to say anymore because I'm not like fully confident in this assertion, but once it entered my brain, it just kept gnawing at me and I could not get it out of my brain. So I will leave it at that. I don't know what the author has personally said about anything, so we'll just leave it at that. And also, that's another risk that, speaking of the Virgin Conception arc, there was another aspect that I came to dislike about these longer arcs is a lot of the stories tend to rely on, like, shock value. But, like, it's usually good shock value because there's, like, build up to it in these, like, episodic formats, and it's very condensed in particular moments. Like, it does not draw out the shock in that first third. It does not draw out the shock value for very long. And then when you get into these longer episodic stories, the, like, shock value, the gross out stuff, the oh wow, that's kind of fucked up stuff starts to become more drawn out and more laborious. For example, the Virgin Conception arc. I don't know if that's what it's called. That's just what I'm calling it because it's easiest. At one point, like, for, like, the first bits of the arc, I was like, whoa, this is kind of fucked up, holy shit! And then it just kept going, I was like, well, that's fucked up. Oh, that's fucked up, too. Oh, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. I will say, though, was not expecting surprise incest. It's been a while since an anime hit me with surprise incest. I gotta give it. You gotta... Do you hand it to him? Do you gotta hand it to him? I don't know. Who knows? So yeah. Overall, I think I would prefer just the single episode stories a lot more than the arcs. Though I do still like a lot of the arcs that there were. Like, in theory, I liked the retrieving the, what's her name? The courtesan graduate. I thought that was a decently solid arc. The first big arc, Castle H, I thought was really good. Yeah. It was still competent overall. And I think that's one of the things I really got to give this show is it was overall, like, very competent. There were very few moments. It never really reached, like, holy shit, this is awesome status. But, like, there were very few moments where I was just like, come on, get this over with, let's go. I was just, it felt like very good, like, just veg out and watch this, like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? Very good, compelling television on a moment-to-moment basis. Though I will say it started to wear thin a little bit at the end. It was just very competent writing overall, and competent animation overall as well. Not quite as competent. It's not... There's nothing in this show that... Well, actually, no. I will say, like, the horror elements look really good in this show. There is so much stuff in this that is creepy as fuck. And, like, disgusting looking and terrifying looking. There are some designs in this show that are going to stick with me for a while. So, that part... The parts that they really needed to focus on look really good. Everything else is just kind of meh. Not terrible looking. It never looks like outright terrible. There are no, like, production collapses in this show. But the just regular talky bits, they're framed competently and they're acted competently. But the animation is just pretty average to mediocre overall. I have read the first volume of the manga, and so that's why I was like on the fence with the first volume of the manga, because it was like, I was reading it and I was like, I really like the ideas here, but I don't think the author is hasn't quite mastered being a manga artist yet. Where they, like, the paneling is really rough and disjointed, and, like, the flow is kind of clunky and awkward, and it wasn't quite fun to read as a manga, and so I knew this was airing at the time when I was reading the manga, so it was like, okay, I'm just gonna put the manga on hold for now, and see if the anime is an adequate substitute. And I could go either way with this one. For me, this was an adequate substitute for the manga. Though, like, regular talky bits are a bit sauceless in comparison to the manga, because the manga actually has some really strong imagery in it. But the spooky moments definitely make up for it. So, overall, competent show. Will I tune in for a second season? I think so, because it's definitely... I was scared that they were really gearing up for, like, a big ol' arc in whatever the next season is going to be. But it does look like they're prepping for more segmentation of this, like, Kyoto arc into more episodic stuff. So, yeah, it was a fun show. Would recommend.
I just realized I completely forgot to talk about the characters in all of that, because I just had so many other things on my mind, but the characters were good. Not incredibly compelling, but better than I was expecting them to be. So I guess that... And the pseudo yandere girlfriend is concerning. Anyway, Dark Gathering is complete. Where did I decide I was gonna put this? We're gonna put it right under Fate Strange Fake in the number 32 spot. And you get a decent 7. Fun times. Okay, so how many does that leave us with? It leaves us with 43 randoms. So let's see what we roll next. It is 19. What is 19? Butareba. Okay. I think this is another isekai thing involving a pig. Let's find out.
It is times like these when I truly question, what the fuck am I doing here? I watched about 3.5 minutes of Butareba, our first isekai of the season. I fucking hate this trend of I got isekai'd, but I turned into something else. Because Reese Slime is the only one to do it well, because you can actually do something in that's interesting. Like, reincarnated as a sword, suck. Vending machine, suck. Pig, suck. It's so bad. And so, okay, so this show starts by dragging out this introduction. I know I said I only watched 3.5 minutes, but man, they drag out that 3.5 minutes. Like, it takes him so long to figure out that he's... That's one of the things with isekai that I, like, don't get. Like, if I woke up in a non-human body, I feel like that is something that I would recognize immediately. But, like, obviously this is, like, a fictional concept, but they never explain... None of these shows ever explain how this body, like, feels normal enough to trick them at first? Or, like, why they're tricked or something? Like, the implication in this one is that the guy's still, like, sleepy or tired, I guess. But, like, you would recognize that you were a fucking pig immediately because you wouldn't be wearing clothes. And your body would be completely different. I don't get this concept. I truly don't. Then the stuff that Twitter told me about this show started. Because immediately upon being recognized as, like, not being, like, quite a pig, I guess, a man in a pig's body. Oh, before we move on from that, this guy calls himself a scientist, like a researcher or something. Which makes it even more infuriating that he doesn't immediately recognize that something is wrong. So anyway, a anime girl pulls him out of the pig pen, and immediately he's like, "Oh, I hope she's a high schooler. I'd love if she like patted me, like pet me as a high schooler." And I'm like, gross. What the fuck? This is the main character. Nope. Next.
Okay, Butareba off the goddamn list. Let's crank down our random number generator and see what we get next. It is 33. It's one of the... Oh, Girlfriend, Season 2. Alright, I thought the last season was pretty okay-ish. It was fine. I don't know if I'm going to make it all the way through this season, but we're about to find out.
Not gonna lie. I'm starting to forget why I found this series fun in the first place. I got through, like, a little bit into the second episode of Girlfriend Season 2, and I realized that I just was not having fun at all. Like, I think I already did this for a seasonal wrap-up show series. Like, way, way back when I first started this. what was that, 2021? God, that was almost 3 years ago. Fuck. What was I going with this? This author, I think I'm just not a fan of. Like, Hiroyuki, I believe the author's name is, he did The Comic Artist and His Assistant, which was the first series I watched of his, and I watched all of somehow, but that was before I was, like, super hypercritical of bad shows and just dropped them. Like, I watched all of that and kind of hated it. And then Aho Girl came out, and I really hated that. And Girlfriend is just more of the thing that I don't like about this author, where the characters are fucking dumb, but not in a fun way. Except for, like, the main character of the series. Naoya is fun in a dumb way, where, like, that's the reason that he is so earnest and endearing and why he's able to pull this poly relationship. The other characters aren't fun. Like, and they also, like, their interactions and their relationships don't make any fucking sense. Like, Shino, I just straight up hate now. I wasn't a big fan of her in the first season, but now she's just fucking annoying. And I forget what the red-haired girl is, but she's, like, just does not respond at all to the fact that her supposed best friend is trying to end this poly relationship thing that she agreed to. And that's like probably the biggest problem with the series that I'm pretty sure I mentioned last time, but is becoming even more annoying this time, is that this show is not into the idea of a poly relationship. It is, like, it's just not in, it's not making it, how do I phrase this? I don't know. It's just not, it's constantly trying to dance around that fact. And it, like, the red-haired girl just doesn't put up a fight at all with this, like, with her best friend trying to interfere with this relationship dynamic. The blonde-haired YouTube asshole bitch does not understand boundaries whatsoever and is basically just a stalker at this point. I don't like the cast of this show except for Naoya. And it still looks like crap. This is not a good-looking show. Why am I here? How did I get here? What room am I in? Yeah, it's just not fun. It's annoying and loud and dumb, and I don't like it. Alright. Girlfriend Season 2 is off the list. Let's roll again and see what we get. 18. What is 18? Stardust Telepath. Okay, I heard this was a fun little comedy slice of life series from this season. Let's see if it's decent enough to get all the way through. Yeah, I'm not vibing with that one, unfortunately. I got through a little over 2 episodes of Stardust Telepath. I wanted to like it because there is some good stuff about it. I think the main character's characterization and how, like, incredibly shy and, like, socially terrified she is. I thought that was conveyed pretty well. It's a decent looking production too. The character designs are nice, though I think the color palette's a little too oversaturated for me. And they're decent models. The Compositing's nice. There's some good framing, some good color work in terms of like more abstract coloring. But I'm just not vibing with the story, I guess, the characters, the slice of life vibes of this one. Now this is one of the Manga Time Kirara series, which has been a big subgenre of manga adapted into anime lately. Like, this came from the main Manga Time Kirara magazine, which is where stuff like K-On! And Sancho Sanyo and Yu Yu Shiki come from. And Slow Start, I believe, is another one from there. But this is like a whole like brand of manga magazines. Like, there's a bunch of different offshoots that have made stuff like Demon Girl Next Door and Comic Girls and New Game and Slow Loop. A lot of shows that I like. Unfortunately, this one's not one of them. And I don't really have a good explanation for why I don't vibe with this one, other than I just find the dialogue not particularly engaging, I guess. It could be something to do with the director, because this is a director that I historically am not a fan of. He directed the anime adaptation of Yu Yu Shiki, which I did not like. He did Endro... Actually, I don't know if it's a he. It's Kaori is the name of the director. They did Yu Yu Shiki, which I didn't like. They did Endro, which I dropped. They did that one, like, comedy series with, like, a pet mummy that I didn't like. They also did the second season of Quince, but I didn't watch the second season. I didn't get through the first season. So, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I didn't finish this one, since this is historically a director that I don't care for. But I can't really put a particular finger on why I'm not vibing with this one, other than, I guess it's the specifics of the Kirara K anime that I vibe with, I guess. And it's like these intangible specifics, like Chaos from... Like, there's a lot of protagonists that are very similar within the genre. Like our main character, Umika, I think her name is. Like, she is similar to, like, Chaos from Comic Girls, or Shamiko from Demon Girl Next Door. These very, like, down on their luck, I guess, fail girls, for lack of a better word. And I will say that she is definitely the best part of this anime. I guess I don't really particularly vibe with... Like, the other characters are fine, but I'm just not into this one, I guess. I'm disappointed that I don't fully understand why I don't vibe with this one, other than that it's boring to me. It has nothing to do with it being, like, slice of life, because I just listed off a bunch of slice of life that I didn't find boring. I just didn't vibe with this one, unfortunately. I do like the concept of, like, the telepathy thing. Like, it makes it be like, oh, that's a neat little sci-fi concept. Or it could just be that this isn't a sci-fi series at all, and the alien girl is actually just a girl with amnesia who thinks that she's an alien, and she's just really good at intuiting emotions from people. It could be that that's how this goes. But unfortunately, I'm not gonna watch enough of it to figure that out, I guess.
Alright, Stardust Telepath, unfortunately, coming off the list. We're gonna do two more randoms. We got 40 shows left in this round, so we're gonna do two more. Next random is 15. Tearmoon Empire. I heard people talk about the first episode of this show, and then, like, not at all afterwards. So let's figure out what it's about.
Alright. Made it through almost 3 whole episodes of Tearmoon Empire. This one was almost good. It had a lot of stuff that I thought had some potential, but there's one key factor that I'll get to that really made me like not super vibe with this show. Like, this is the setup for this is basically, it's kind of like Hamefura, but it's not an isekai and it's not an otome game. It's just 18th century France before the revolution, with some caveats, that being adding animifying it and Japanifying it, like the open bath, I'm pretty sure was not a staple of French society, and the fact that the princess of the kingdom is going to school with a bunch of other students. I feel like she would just be... I don't know how education worked back then, but it seems like she would just be tutored at home. That seems like what, like, actual royalty would do. In any case, I actually liked the first episode a decent bit. Like, it showed, like, it's basically like a time jump back, like a time jump into the past to prevent a bloody future, to prevent the French Revolution by actually being a good ruler for once. And I like that our Princess Mia is kind of like halfway between, again, to use the Hamefura example, she's halfway between, like, the actual otome game Katarina and Katarina after the isekaiing, where she's just, like, super fun and wholesome. Like, this Mia is, like, internally, she's still kind of, like, snotty and, like, arrogant and such, but outwardly she is trying to prevent her own decapitation by being nice and actually thinking of other people. So I like that there's, like, a balance there, sort of. And her little gremlin aesthetic is something that I find quite hilarious. But the problem with this show is that it's just too easy. Like, all of the problems just suddenly start getting fixed without her really doing all that much. And also she doesn't seem to have a lot of there doesn't seem to be anyone with oversight over her. Like, she is a princess, not a queen or a king. She's, like, not actually in charge. Like, I don't actually know how royalty works, but I don't think this is how it works. Am I expecting too much from something that's clearly, like, a comedy? Probably, but, like, if that's the main thrust, if the main thrust of your series is do the thing that's not going to get you beheaded, it seems like it's way too easy for her to just do that thing. And so it's not really motivating to be like, oh, how's she going to get out of this one? What's going to happen next? It's just kind of like she just isn't a fucking prick and suddenly everyone loves her. And a lot of it is also, like, very 21st century values being pasted onto a 18th century character. So, yeah, there was some potential there. I thought I genuinely, like, think that the the experience of her being like jailed for years before finally being executed, and all of the and how that like the dichotomy between that and her luxury life as a noble, and her like being very aware of that dichotomy, I thought was really good. But they just don't really challenge her in any way outside of that, so I'm just kind of bored by this one, unfortunately.
Alright, Tearmoon Empire, unfortunately, is coming off the list. I think we're going to do run more random for this video. So what do we got? 39 left. Let's see what we roll. 29. Onimusha. I believe this is a Netflix one about that might be CG. Let's give it a shot, I guess.
Well, to give this show credit, it's not as bad looking as I was expecting it to be. I mean, it's still not, like, I wouldn't call it good looking, but for a full CG show, it's okay. It's passable. The character designs are decent. Action scenes are actually pretty good. Compositing could use a little work, but it's not like terrible. It's like average, I guess. It's a shame that the story is boring as shit. This is another one of those like ancient like Japanese history ones. This one's about Miyamoto Musashi, the sword saint. I got 12 minutes in, and I could not assign a personality to like anyone aside from like Musashi himself, who's kind of like a grumpy but also playful old man, and then this monk that's traveling with him, Kaisen, who is just very uptight. Could not assign a personality to anyone else. And even those personalities that I listed aren't like super interesting. These are not fun characters. These aren't characters that I'm interested in following. I have no reason to want to see Musashi kill demons. Or this particular iteration of Musashi, I guess. Which brings out something like that I thought while I was watching this. Is that I want to see like the American version of this would be so wild. Like to see like a cartoon where like George Washington fights like demons or something. To my knowledge, there's only been like one serious attempt at this, and that is Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which was not a good movie, but it was fun, at least when I saw it in theaters. God, what was that? That was in like the late 2000s or something, or early 2010s. That was a while ago. But it's wild to think about that, I guess, because that's just not something that we have in America, is like a bunch of like alternate history media about our founding and like famous people in our history. We don't really have that. Maybe it's because Japanese history is just so much longer than American history, or it's something to do with the patriotism that we attach to our founding or something. I just think it's funny to think about. And a lot more interesting to think about than this show. So, we're going to move on.
Alright, Onimusha is off the list. So we're going to jump down to our first end cap series now. This is Spy Family Season 2. This is going to be officially past all the stuff that I've read in the manga now. So, I like this show. Let's watch some more.
Alright, another season of Spy Family in the bag. Before we jump in, I want to briefly address a very weird phenomenon that I noticed with this series. Like, Spy Family on the whole. And that phenomenon is its mal scores. Like, as of when I checked a few hours ago, the very first season of Spy Family had an 8.55. At one point it was over a 9 when it was airing, but it like settled down. 8.55 is still fucking phenomenal. Season 1 Part 2 has an 8.27, and then Season 2, which is the one that I just finished, has an 8.08. Now, if you've seen my video on my anime list, or are just familiar with my anime list in general, you know that that's extremely uncommon for a series to have its sequels drop in score as they go down. Because normally what happens is the people who like the show keep watching the show and keep rating it highly, and the people who don't like the show stop watching it, and so their ratings don't typically count. And you can see that reflected in like the mal members numbers. Like the Season 1 has like 1.6 million members. Season 1 Part 2 has around 800,000, and then Season 2 has around 400,000. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why this score drop is happening, because all of these seasons are roughly the same. They're all in like the 8 range. Granted, I will say Season 1 is still the strongest front to back, but it's not like a huge disparity in quality. Especially because of some of like the big arc of Season 2, the cruise ship arc, which was fucking incredible. We got this big fat Yor arc, smack dab in the middle of Season 2, which was one of my complaints about like previous Spy Family content, is that Yor was easily like the least interesting and least developed of our 3 leads. And so we finally got the thing that me and a lot of other people have been like asking for, more Yor content that actually makes her feel like relevant to the series. And it was really well done. We got this big, heavy action arc right in the middle of it that also had like very clearly shows like Yor's developing feelings towards her this false family that she's been living with, and that she very much, like, even if she doesn't like say it directly, she really does consider this to be like a real family now, and is something that she will die to protect, and even more so, she will keep living in order to protect, and to keep experiencing this family dynamic that she's fallen in love with. And it really fleshed out her character in a way that made her feel a lot more whole, and not just like the token assassin waifu. I really liked this arc. I will admit that the like episodic content of this season wasn't the best episodic content, but it wasn't the worst either. Like, I still think the worst episode is the one with that one kid who thinks he's going to get kicked out of school because his dad like is going to lose the pharmaceutical company or something. That is still like my least favorite episode by far. And but nothing in this season was anywhere near this bad. Like, there was still a lot of laugh out loud moments, a lot of really cute, fun moments, a lot of just really fun little vignettes of the Forgers going on random adventures and such. I think if I had to hazard a guess, what has happened with the score, the general perception of Spy Family and why its score keeps dropping, is that people have been like, I don't know. They got into this show for the wrong reasons, I think. Because, like, admittedly, this show doesn't do the best at... No, I'm not gonna put this on the show. This is the fans' fault. This is a comedy series, first and foremost. Maybe because of, like, the slick production value and such, people mistook it for a more action-heavy series than it actually is. But this is not... This is a series that very evenly balances comedy and action and slice of life. And this season continues to do that pretty well. Like, even in the cruise ship arc, there were some really fun moments and some really wholesome moments. It was good. So, I think people have just had a fundamental misunderstanding about what this series is, and a lot of people are, like, slowly starting to realize that it's not what they thought it was. Now, I will admit the show isn't doing them any favors in that it... I think I've mentioned this before. It is very hard to transition from arc-based content to episodic content, and Spy Family does that constantly in this show. Yeah, it was in the Bungo Stray Dogs bit that I mentioned that, I believe. Yeah, it's what was I saying? Right, Spy Family makes that transition constantly. Like, there'll be a few, like, episodic things, and then there'll be, like, a big ol', like, 3 or 4 episode arc, and then, like, more episodic content, and then another arc, and then more episodic content. Like, the cruise ship arc was, like, 6 episodes, I think, or, like, 5.5 episodes. So, I can understand from that perspective why people would be disappointed, but fuck them. Like, so I will admit, like, the pacing is weird, but it's not bad. It's just different. And the show still looks as good as it always has been. Like, there weren't as many, like, outside of the big action cuts in the cruise ship arc, there weren't a lot of big flashy moments. Like, there were... Again, I still think, like, Season 1, Part 1 was the best that the series has been. Like, that had some really impressive cuts in it. But there's still some, like... Every now and then you'll see a cut that's like, oh, that's interesting. I like what they did there. Like, just the way that the camera moves and the way that characters interact in the scene. And also, we can't understate that... It cannot be understated that this is a very solid... what's the word? Consistent production front to back. There is no bad animation in this season. It is just good front to back, which you might think is something that you should take for granted, but me doing this series for so long, I can tell you that it is not something that should be taken for granted. That is not normal. Yeah. Spy Family is still good. And I don't understand you if you think otherwise. I don't get why this score keeps dropping, because my score really hasn't.
Alright, Spy Family Season 2 is complete. We're going to scroll up and put it right in here in the number 18 spot for the year with a light 8. Fun series. I hope they do more. Can't wait for whenever the Code White series comes to the US, or the movie. Hyped for that.